Welcome back, Joshua 6 Up Tabletop. Doing a long-awaited, at least for me, long-awaited video on different ways to paint British infantry from the American War of Independence. So I'm using models for this video from this Perry miniature kit, and I guess the regiment I'm painting is the 1st Marines based in Bunker Hill. I tried to do some research. I didn't find too much out there, but I kind of liked the style that I went with a hat that's a little different to the tricorn that I typically see. So they would be painted similar to a regiment with white facings. So I'm kind of attacking it from that angle. So I painted 3 different models and then 3 different sets. So as you can see here, we have this fast method, a medium method, and then a slow method. So fast method is like contrast paints. Medium method is just typically how I normally do it, and slow method would be me mixing my own colors, trying my best to take my time and just go from there. There wasn't any particular rush. I wasn't trying to get any of these particularly done quicker than others. But what I did do was just set my stopwatch and paint. Sometimes I'd be watching a movie or YouTube. So, it's not as quick as if I was just, locking in, trying to paint as fast as possible. With all that being said, let's take a look at the times and what I got before I go through the video. Typically in army painting, we'll be painting in batches, so I kind of wanted to give that feel when I was testing how long it might take. So for the slow, it was about 10-11 minutes per model. For the medium process, it was 22 minutes per model. That was, like I said, my standard process. And for the slow, it was about 41 minutes per model. I didn't rush this. I tried to, paint it as nice as I could. I didn't want to spend forever. But without ado, let's take a look at the painted models and the process. Alright, kicking off with doing some dry brushing. I've seen this method referred to as like slap chop. There's different methods. I guess this is called, but so this is a makeup brush. You add a little bit of off-white paint to start with, and you'll brush that very lightly. You'll wipe a little bit off on the kitchen towel, and then you'll wipe it off. Again, and then apply it lightly onto the model, and then you kind of do it in the second step with white, like pure white, so it adds a pretty big highlight. So this step is, I guess this whole design on the slow process, as you will, was just to go as quickly as possible without trying to make any mistakes, kind of see what product I could get just by using some of the contrast paints, army paint that is being marketed out there in the last couple of years. And so yeah, I had a good time with this process. As you'll see in the end, I think it looks a little bit different from the other paints as I apply black, the first contrast paint, Black Templar. I'm not sure if this even exists anymore. I think it might have been replaced by like Black Legion or something. But I know it's not too particular on the paints here. You could use contrast paint by Games Workshop, Citadel. I know Army Painter has like a speed paint range. I know a couple other model and paint manufacturers make their own speed ranges. It kind of is, kind of the new paint design these days. So yeah, I just apply that all over in black. But yeah, the goal here was, it's not to make the best product, but it was just to replicate something. Like if I was looking to put together an army really quickly, what's maybe one of the quickest methods I could do that hopefully still looks pretty good. Now this isn't the end all be all in terms of what you could do. You could definitely start with some of these stages, and then add a little bit of paint and highlights on top of there, and it could probably look pretty good than what I turned out with this model. But yeah, this process was fun to go through. I mean, it is quick, but in areas like this where I'm adding the Flesh Terrors red, you do need a little bit of smaller brush. You don't want to flood it with too much paint because there is a lot of white on this model with the different straps. You want to be careful with that. So you want to do your best to just push the red into the recesses around the white straps to keep them as white as possible. But we can always touch that up later, as you'll see I do on a couple spots. Working in with some Gargax Sewer. I actually had a different, I think it was Wildwood. It was another Citadel contrast paint. Ended up drying out on me, so you can use any brown here. Typically just apply it all over the gun, and it adds a nice little shade. I've applied this even on processes that take a little bit longer, other than just trying to go quick. I think it makes a great foundation for any wood that kind of has like a grainy texture to it. Moving on to the skin here. This is a quick way to do skin. I mean, I think it turns out pretty good. I think maybe I could have thinned it a little bit more, but this is Gilman flesh. I think there's dark oath flesh. There's probably a couple flesh tones. So depending on what tone you want, there's multiple paints you can go with. But yeah, just continue to apply that over the hands and face, and that's pretty much all you need. Just one coat. Now we got Contrast Apothecary White. It's a very interesting paint. I've always found that this paint actually does a lot more work than I anticipated doing. I think the effect is pretty cool. It's just to, as the contrast settles into the recesses and leaves the top surfaces without much paint on it. So this is like a very, very thin, watered down gray. So it makes the top surfaces that pop, pretty white, and then the recesses dark gray. And I think it does a great job to, add some, different variations of grays and whites, add some depth to the model there. So I've always been, pretty impressed when you use it. Just make sure that your other contrast paints are like relatively dry, so they don't bleed together. So other than metallic paint, pretty much the only non-contrast speed paint I'm using is just this white. I felt it was a little too muted after all the contrast effects, and so I wanted the powdered wig just to really pop. And in a couple areas where I overlapped maybe some contrast paint on the straps, I just highlight a little bit and put a little bit of lace on the rim of the hat. Like I mentioned, we are using a metallic paint, and I use this across each of the 3 different styles of paint that I use. It's just Gunmetal, aka Interactive. I've used this on pretty much every video I've made where I do just a basic gunmetal metallic. I think it's an awesome paint. And yeah, just apply it on the little bayonet, the different metal parts of the gun, and the water jug carrier thing that the soldier is carrying. And there is our final product created. All in all, you do get the time that you put into it. I think this actually would look pretty good if you had a whole regiment painted the exact same way. The white pops a little bit. The red is nice and vibrant. I think it helps maybe after you varnish this. So that is just the normal model. For my scheme where I've been painting all my other models, I've been doing an oil wash. So this oil wash will apply to all the schemes, but I'm just demonstrating it here. This is Aptlong 502 Earth. If you're new to oil washes, you just mix some oil wash and mineral spirits just to make something similar to an acrylic wash, and then just apply that pretty much all over the model. At least that's how I do it. If you do washers in other circumstances, you might not apply it all over the model, but I do here. And then you just give it a couple hours to kind of dry and settle a little bit, and then wipe it away with a makeup sponge. So here's our makeup sponge. I don't need anything this big, so I just rip it in half. Just a safe product, and no need to use something so big when you can just use half. Because I did let this sit a little bit longer, the oil paint is pretty stuck on there, so I just add a little bit of mineral spirits to help pull it off. And I try to aim specific sections that I want. So I want to leave. If it gathered too much, I'd try to pull a little bit off that area. But I just try to go and take it off of the highest points in the model and just leave some of the oil paint in the recesses. And when I finish basing, it looks really good. It looks like a great environmental effect. Welcome to the medium process. Talking a little bit of strategy behind this process. Now, this is what I would typically use when painting my British. Kind of the reason I developed this, I didn't really develop anything. I just picked paints that I had and just experimented a little bit and found something that works. It's not as detailed as the slow process, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Or perhaps, if you're just here to check this out, that's totally fine too. It's not as detailed, but since this is a miniature game and I'm painting hundreds and hundreds of models on the British side and the American side, I don't want to spend years painting tons and tons of models. I want a process that is, somewhere in the middle, somewhere that looks very nice from the table level where you'll see them, but not something where, if I don't inspect it with a microscope or something, I'm going to miss out on that detail. So for me, this process has kind of fit that gap, and we're going from there. So yeah, Vallejo, I've slowly transitioned most of my paints from Games Workshop to Vallejo and other models, and part of it is just the pot. I like having the little squirt bottles as opposed to the clip open kind of round tops, where I feel like I lose some paint because it just dries. And so this is Vallejo flat red, and that was Vallejo black. And this paint is great. Sometimes you might have to do 2 coats because the pigment is not as strong, but I think that's fine, and I think it works out great. So I'll be painting using light green gray from Vallejo, and this is my substitute for white to begin with. If I feel like I need to highlight to true white, I will do that. But as you can see from my overspray I had on the model, that this does have a little bit of, you can see the green and the gray, kind of like the cream, the ivory that pops out as compared to the residue or whatever's left of the white ink that I use for my zenithal. But yeah, I like to set the base of the whites with this. If I need to go up, I will, but the eye reads it from tabletop level as white, and it does not streak as much as using a pure white paint. I use Vallejo flat flesh. I'm not doing anything too complex or complicated for this skin. I think for the medium scheme, I just do flat flesh and do a wash later. You can use any brown here. I just grabbed the paint that I thought would look good. I use various different browns. Sometimes I change it up depending on the regiment, sometimes depending on the model, just to have a little mix of wood color. So this is Catachan flesh. It's a little bit more of a chocolate brown. And yeah, just paint the gun that way, and that's pretty much all you got to do. Here we go. Right-click flesh shade. You could thin it down a little bit if you want. Just make sure you keep it moving so it doesn't dry and splotch, and try to keep it out of the hair. That's pretty much all the effects we're doing for this skin. And make sure don't forget to add it to the hands. Jumping in with Gunmetal from AK Interactive. And yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the short process, so apologize if you're watching all the way through. You'll get the same spiel. Water canteen, the bayonet, And then the metallic parts of the gun, this is an easy application. Smaller brushes are helpful here. If you need some examples, you can look up photos of guns from that period, drawings, demonstrations, and all in all, yeah, I think it looks good. Make sure to add the little white lace on top of the hat, as that's key to having the model fit in with the unit. So that's the end of the medium process. I think it's a nice middle ground between blocking in the colors. You can add a little bit more detail if you want. You could bring the reds up a little bit. You could do more with the face if you wanted to, but I wanted something that I could just knock out 50, 100 Redcoats if I wanted to, and something that would look good with that process. Welcome in to the long painting session. I guess this is me trying to test my more artsy side. So I'll be using my Liquitex acrylic gouache paints. They're like a heavy body acrylic full of pigments. I'll try to be mixing pretty much each color that I use. It's interesting describing these colors because compared to Games Workshop and like Army Painter and stuff, I think these are more traditional artist colors. So it's just primary red or burnt sienna. So it's funny comparing them to other named paints. So yes, we use primary red, burnt sienna, black, and titanium white. So as you can see in the upper left there, just mixing up something that's a little bit darker than this primary red, and I'll be applying it basically everywhere on the coat. Next process, I add a little bit more of the burnt sienna and a little bit of black, and so I just create a darker red, and I apply that anywhere in the recesses, so it's going to create visual shadows for when you look at the model. Similar to the shadows, I add a little bit of the scarlet into that mix, and it adds a little bit of light, a little bit of orange into there, and then anywhere that there's like a crease, anywhere where the light would catch, we add that lighter red, so it creates kind of like a three layer process, the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights, and I think it makes a nice complex red coat. And just to take it one little step further higher up, I add even a little bit more scarlet. And this is just for the highest highlights on the very top of the points where any light would catch. So it just adds another step to make a nice complex red. No mixing required here. I used the Mars Black straight from the bottle and apply this to all the black ears. So it'd be the boots, the powder bag, the hat, as well as the bayonet. And apply that and just take your time. Next colors we're mixing, a little bit of white, a little bit of black, a dark gray here. If you want to do another highlight, you can add it to a little bit of light gray. Just keep adding a little bit of white. Just add this to the black areas as if light's reflecting off of it. then whether it's leather or velvet or whatever it might be, that it will look like it has some texture from the gray paint put on it. So I was looking to replicate the light green gray from Vallejo. So I do a little bit of what is this, yellow oxide, and I believe it's verdant green or verdant hue. Tried to make a little blue and yellow to make it green, and then add some white into it, a little bit of ochre, and it's a little bit more yellow than I would have liked. So I take this step, I think like 2 or 3 times off of camera, just adding a little bit more white each time. So with color mixing, you get what you get. Sometimes it's not exact, especially for a novice color mixer like myself. But yeah, fun process. Apply this anywhere pretty much that there'd be white, and this is just setting the foundations as we build up to essentially pure white. Just to show, I guess, some of the difference on the left and on the right is like one highlight stage later. So it does take some time. It does take a couple coats to get a nice solid look. But after at least a couple coats, the white looks very nice. I mixed up a little brown, and so that was just burnt sienna, a little bit of black. I think even maybe a little bit of white if I needed, and just kind of mix my own brown and apply that to the gun. Moving on to the next step, we'll be approaching this with pure white, hitting the buttons, hitting the vest, some of the highlighted areas on the vest, the straps, basically anywhere where it's the highest areas. I just apply some pure white, and it transitions nicely to show basically a nice transition between the cream into the white, and it stands out nicely. And don't forget the white on the hat. So mixing skin tones is actually fairly easy. I took a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow oxide, and I kind of got it to a color that I liked. And then you can add white or black, and it pulls the skin color in each direction. White makes it lighter, and black adds it more to a dark brown. So I got it to a spot. It was kind of a lighter pinkish Caucasian skin tone, so that I applied that to the model, and that is the base of our skin. Nice and easy to take it to the next step. Just add a little bit of white. So I mix it on the palette, and I apply it to any raised areas on the face, on the lip, on the chin, and on the hands. to get some nice contrast within the face. I also did the eyes off camera, just using various blacks and whites in different stages, and I think it turned out quite nice. So I'm not doing any non-metallic metal. I am using a metallic paint, and that's just the AK Interactive gunmetal I've used on the two other schemes in this video. So not too much to say about it, just hit all the metallics, and yeah, make sure you get everything on the gun, and that will finish it off for the slow and intricate process for this scheme. Okay, as the final pix scroll of this long process model, I just want to cover very briefly materials used in basing in case anybody was interested in that. I'll take a final look at the unit and we'll go over final thoughts. So in conclusion, this is conclusion, final wrap-ups as I'm showing some of the diorama effects and how I use them in basing. Overall, I think this was a good test to try different speeds of painting, different methods, something other than what I had used for the last couple regiments, battalions in this project. I don't think that they look perfectly, that they go perfectly together. The quick method, the contrast method, I think looks doesn't quite fit exactly the scheme that I'm going for. So I think I will take those 8 models and add a couple more, paint them in a similar way, and they will be their own regiment. I would be happy to have a couple regiments of those on the table. This is Josh with 6 Up Tabletop as we do a quick close-up look of each of the painted squads with their basing up close. I just wanted to say that there were lessons I learned from each. The quick method is quick, but you still got to be careful with your brush. The medium method, I learned that there are some steps I can take from the long method that I think won't add that much time, but will increase the quality of the skin and the white that I painted, so I'm happy to take those into the future. If you learned anything from this video or learned a new recipe or anything like that, that's awesome. Happy to hear that. I'm just glad you stuck around, or even if you just skipped to the end, totally cool. This is Josh with 6 Up Tabletop. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.